In a move that stunned the automotive world, Honda's global CEO, Toshihiro Mibe, recently stirred intense debate with a bold, assumptive, and unsettling vision for the near future. At a time when many manufacturers are emphatically pledging to transition away from internal combustion engines, IC, and embrace full electrification, Mibe effectively threw cold water on that rush, suggesting instead that Honda would maintain its commitment to building combustion engines, perhaps well into the 2040s. His rationale was deeply personal. After more than 3 decades immersed in engine development, he's both deeply rooted in ICE and wholly aware of what he knows best. Yet in his leadership role, he insisted he must divorce his personal attachments from what he believes serves the company's long-term interests. This wasn't some throwaway remark. In May 2025, during Honda's business briefing in Tokyo, Mibe announced that the automaker would be dialing back its earlier, more aggressive targets when it comes to EVs. Honda had originally aimed for electric vehicles and fuel cell cars to account for 30% of its global sales by 2030. That figure has now been pushed aside amid what Mibe described as growing market uncertainties, shifts in environmental regulation, and even changing tariff landscapes, especially in the US. Instead, Honda recalibrated, lowering its 2030 EV sales target to somewhere closer to 20%. More striking still, the automaker trimmed its planned electrification investment from a whopping 10 trillion yen, roughly $69 billion, down to 7 trillion yen, about $48 billion. But the long-term goal, reaching full carbon neutrality and phasing out combustion engines entirely by 2040, remains on the books, albeit with a more measured timeline. That shift wasn't made lightly. Honda acknowledged that hybrids would serve as the principal transitional technology in the years ahead. The company committed to introducing 13 new hybrid models globally by the end of the decade, with hybrid sales now expected to exceed 2 million units per year by 2030. At one point, Honda had planned an $11 billion EV production facility in Canada. That project has been delayed now for at least 2 years. Instead, the emphasis will be rebalanced, reinforcing hybrid electric vehicles, HEVs, expanding motorcycle business, and doubling down on cost-efficient electrification solutions. Honda will also adapt its Marysville, Ohio facility to build both EVs and hybrids, reflecting the more nuanced path it envisions. These adjustments didn't go unnoticed. According to AP and other outlets, Mibe characterized the change as less a retreat than a strategic course correction. He emphasized that Honda still believes electrification is essential, but that the timing must align with market realities. In the US, for instance, EV demand has demonstrated cooling momentum. Mibe also highlighted the resilience of Honda's global motorcycle business, particularly in markets like India, as another pillar supporting overall profitability. Yet even as Honda tempered its electrification ambitions, recent sales figures tell a more dynamic and nuanced story. In early 2025, Honda's newly launched Prologue electric SUV, built on GM's Ultium architecture, delivered an astounding year-over-year sales increase of 963% in the US. During Q1 alone, the Prologue moved more than 9,500 units, and Honda sold over 14,000 EVs globally across its Honda and Acura brands. That performance catapulted Honda into the US EV top 10 by model, placing the Prologue on par with long-established players. Even as Tesla and Ford contended with stagnating or declining EV numbers, Honda came roaring in with one of the most explosive launches of the year. This rapid EV momentum is particularly striking when contrasted with earlier perceptions of Honda as a laggard in electrification. For years, Honda's only full electric offerings were the small-volume, short-range Honda E, now discontinued, and more recently, in North America, the Prologue and Acura ZDX, both partnering with GM. In China, Honda rolled out the Ye sub-brand, including the P7 and S7 SUVs in a GT concept, part of a plan to introduce 10 EV models in that market by 2027. Still, Mibe's comments make clear that Honda is not chasing a single-minded EV strategy. He acknowledged that ICE still has utility, especially in performance cars and pickups where regulations permit and customer expectations persist. He also flagged low-carbon synthetic fuels as promising ways to stretch combustion engine viability in heavy-duty applications. Fuel cells remain on the table too, but limited infrastructure and cost remain hurdles. Pulling back to examine the big picture, we see that Honda has crafted a three-dimensional plan. Accelerate EVs where uptake is strong, like with the Prologue in the US. Massively expand hybrids as a stopgap, and keep combustion tech alive in niches in specific regions. Its updated Zero Series EV lineup, featuring sleek aerodynamic sedans and SUVs built around a new in-house operating system, Asimo OS, is planned for rollout from 2026 onward. There's also Afeela, the breakthrough EV from Sony Honda Mobility, featuring up to 45 sensors and a futuristic, software-driven cabin. Pre-orders begin in 2025, with deliveries slated for 2026. Meanwhile, in markets like Australia, Honda's regional CEO underscored that consumers are not fully ready to go all-electric. Hybrids already constitute 50% of Honda's Australian sales and are expected to account for around 90% by next year, as a smoother middle ground between ICE and EV. The complexity of Honda's situation reflects broader turbulence in the industry. Global EV sales still rise. Yes, the IEA projects 20 million units in 2025, but demand is cooling in key markets. Policy shifts, infrastructure gaps, and consumer hesitancy, especially around cost and charging convenience, have given automakers reason to pause. Honda's move echoes broader recalibration across the sector, ranging from pauses in EV megaplans to renewed attention to hybrids and ICE for flexibility and resilience. Given this backdrop, what exactly did Mibe do that sparked such animated reaction among EV critics and fans? At its core, he challenged the assumption that the future must look like the present's EV hype cycle. By publicly asserting that combustion engines might have a future and dialing back EV investment, he challenged the dominant narrative that electrification must proceed at breakneck speed, come what may. Viewed through one lens that's defensive, backward-looking, even irresponsible. But viewed another way, it might be pragmatic, forward-thinking, and pragmatic, recognizing that circumstances, rather than ideology, should dictate strategy. So will we witness the downfall of a giant brand? Not quite, not yet. Honda's flexibility may prove its strength. The EV surge of the Prologue reminds us that Honda can still capture lightning in a bottle when it gets the execution right. The pivot toward hybrids may ultimately help smooth the transition, maintaining profitability and providing consumer choice in markets not yet ready for full electrification. And the company's EV ambitions, manifested in its Zero Series and the Afeela, remain real, just more strategically timed. Different consumers will draw different conclusions. Some will see Mibe's stance as defiance of inevitable progress. Others will appreciate the layered, balanced roadmap that acknowledges transition, infrastructure, and consumer readiness. His approach might be messy, but it may also be more resilient. Does Honda risk being left behind by all EV purists? Yes, but it may also avoid the pitfalls of overshooting in slow-growth markets. Ultimately, the success or failure of Mibe's gamble will hinge on execution and adaptability. As for the sinister truth about EVs, not so sinister, but too often overstated, is the notion that they're zero emissions icons. Every battery comes with environmental costs in production, mining, and disposal. The life cycle emissions vary widely based on energy mix, scale, and recycling. Electric vehicles are not magic bullets, and global infrastructure must catch up. That's part of what Honda seems to be acknowledging by emphasizing hybrids and ICE where that infrastructure, or policy or demand, isn't yet ready. In this unfolding story, Honda isn't abandoning the promise of electrification, but it's choosing its moments. It's holding on to traditional strengths while carefully building the future. Whether that will save Honda from likely challenges or whether it will allow it to adapt and thrive is yet to be determined. But for now, the story is far from over, and that makes watching what comes next all the more compelling.